All right, let's talk about one of the most mysterious parts of buying or selling a home, the appraisal. How does one person walk through your house and just decide what it's worth? It can feel a little arbitrary, right? Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain. We're going to break down exactly how it works so you can really understand what gives your property its value.
I mean, this is the big one, isn't it? Sometimes literally the million-dollar question. You probably know what you paid for your place. You might even know what your neighbor just sold theirs for. But what is your home really worth? Like its actual objective value? That's exactly what we're going to dig into.
Okay, first things first, we need to get a really important distinction straight. Market price and market value sound similar, but they're totally different things. The market price, that's a fact. It's what the house actually sold for. It's history. But market value, that's more of an educated opinion. It's what an appraiser thinks the home should sell for under normal conditions. So think of it like this. Price is what was paid, value is what should be paid. They're close cousins, for sure, but they are not twins. So what actually creates that market value? Where does it come from? Well, it's not just some random number pulled out of a hat. It's actually built on a foundation of 4 key elements. These are the absolute basics, the pillars that every appraiser looks at first. And hey, luckily for all of us, there's a super easy way to remember them. The acronym is DUST. Yeah, D-U-S-T. For any property to have real, tangible value, it has to have all 4 of these things going for it. Let's break them down. First up is D for demand. This one's pretty simple, right? It just means that people have to actually want the property. But it's not just about wanting it. They also have to have the cash to buy it. I mean, you could have the most amazing mansion in the world, but if nobody who wants it can actually afford it, it's not worth much, is it? All right, next is U for utility. The property has to be, well, useful. It means to serve a purpose. A house you can live in, that has utility. A commercial building where you can open a shop? Yep, utility. If a property can't be used for something, nobody's going to desire it. Then we've got S for scarcity. This is pure supply and demand, stuff we all know. If you've got a hot neighborhood where everyone wants to live, but there's only one house for sale, you better believe that house's value is going to skyrocket. It's simple. The rarer something is, the more valuable it becomes. And last but not least, and this one is so important, is T for transferability. You can have the most beautiful, useful, and rare property in the world, but if you can't legally sell it, maybe there's a messy title or some other legal issue, then it's worthless on the open market. The ownership has to be clean and easy to transfer. So you see, you need all 4, D-U-S-T. Take away even one, and the whole value proposition just falls apart. Okay, so DUST gives us the why, the theory behind what makes a property valuable. But now let's get into the how. How do appraisers actually land on a specific number? Trust me, they don't just guess. They have a professional toolkit with 3 different approaches to figure it out. Basically, they look at the property from 3 different angles to get a complete picture. First, there's the cost approach. You ask yourself, if I had to build this exact house today, from scratch, on this land, what would it cost? Then there's the market approach, which is the one you probably hear about most. You look at what similar houses, we call them comps, have sold for recently in the same area. And finally, for investment properties, there's the income approach. That one's all about how much rent could this place bring in. By looking at all 3, they can get a really solid estimate. All right, so once they've got those big picture methods in mind, it's time to zoom way in. We're talking about putting the property under a microscope. And you might be surprised where they start. It's not with the building, it's with the dirt it's built on. And this is something people forget all the time. Not all land is the same. The size, the shape, where it's located on the street, all of these things can have a huge impact on the final value, and we haven't even stepped inside the house yet. Just look at all these different types. You've got your cul-de-sac lots, corner lots, interior lots, and each one has its own pluses and minuses. A home tucked away at the end of a cul-de-sac is probably going to be valued differently than one sitting on a busy corner or right at a T intersection, you know? An appraiser has to think about all of that. So that leads to a really good question. What happens when the lot isn't a nice, neat rectangle? I mean, real-world properties can have all sorts of weird shapes. So how do you measure that? The answer is actually pretty clever, and it takes you right back to high school math class. You just break that weird, complicated shape down into a bunch of simple, familiar ones. Check this out. So they'll look at the lot and mentally draw a square here, a rectangle there, and oh, that leftover bit is a triangle. Then it's easy. They just calculate the area of each of those simple shapes, add them all together, and boom, you've got the total square footage of a really complex lot. Pretty neat, right?
Okay, we've talked about the land itself, but no property is an island. The neighborhood it's in plays a massive role in its value. You know that saying, location, location, location? Well, it's true. And part of that location is your neighbors.
And this leads to two really interesting principles that work in opposite ways: regression and progression. Okay, so regression is when you have the biggest, best house on the street. Believe it or not, the smaller, less updated homes around you can actually pull your value down. But the opposite is also true. That's progression. If you have the smallest, most modest house in a really fancy neighborhood, all those mansions around you are going to help lift your value up.
All right, let's talk about a classic homeowner question. Let's say you spend, I don't know, 50 grand putting in an amazing new swimming pool. Your home's value just went up by 50 grand, right? Well, maybe not. The answer is a little more complicated.
And that's because of something called the principle of contribution. This is huge. It basically says that any upgrade, a new kitchen, a finished basement, that pool, is only worth what it adds to the total value of the property in a buyer's eyes. So that $50,000 pool, if you live somewhere it snows half the year, it might only add $10,000 to the appraised value. This is maybe the most important takeaway for any homeowner. What you paid for something isn't the same as what it's worth.
So really, it all comes back to this. An appraisal, at its core, is just an educated, professional opinion of value. It's not a permanent fact. It's a snapshot of what a property is likely worth on one particular day, based on all the data and principles we've just gone over.
So now that you've got the basic toolkit, now that you can kind of think like an appraiser, I'll leave you with one last question. It's a question that appraisers are always asking themselves. What is the highest and best use for a property? In other words, what could you do with this piece of land that would make it the most valuable it could possibly be? It's a pretty cool concept to think about the next time you're looking at any piece of real estate.